So yeah, hi everyone to today's Ask Me Anything session with the 20 Crypto Foundation's core developer team, as well as Middleware and JS SDK team, and Sophia compiler team for the first time as well. Wait, this is still on? Yeah, no, so. Yeah, sorry for the technical delays before. We are starting now. Dimitar, can you share your screen, please?
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
I see there are two Dimitars. Okay. I think we're ready.
It's working now, Dimitar.
Okay, great. So, hello. This is our roadmap announcement for the second quarter. This time it will be a bit different because the Aeternity Crypto Foundation has more and more developers joining us. So this goal used to be only core developers showcasing what we'll be doing for the next quarter, but now we are expanding and we have people from UI, from Sophia tooling and Middleware. We expected also Denise from the JavaScript SDK, and maybe he'll join us a bit later on. So without further ado, what we'll be talking today. So first, Hyperchains, of course. We'll explain what's still left to be done. Then we'll briefly discuss transaction execution parallelization, what a snapshot sync is, front-end playground, advanced state channels, Aegora, typed structured data hashing and signing, middleware, JavaScript SDK, if please join us, and Sophia and DevTools. So, Hyperchains. We're really close calling it ready. We're currently working on the lazy leader and Bitcoin connector, and both of those are almost ready. Then we'll have to do the fork awareness for the parent chain. So whenever there is a fork on the parent chain, it should propagate to the child chain, and this is not yet ready. Once this is done, we'll do some final changes in the smart contract for the election, and then we should revisit the staking UI that addresses those changes. We now have a deploy script that starts the hyperchain with a parent chain, local parent chain. It starts the middleware. It comes with basically it comes batteries included. It comes with a wallet. It comes with a faucet, explorer. So everything you need to start your own hyperchain is a single line command at this point. But since the configuration of the hyperchain is really likely to change in the following weeks, this script has to be revisited. And once all of those are done, we'll have a full release of hyperchains. Fingers crossed. Another thing we plan working on is transaction execution parallelization. Basically, every transaction that we apply to the blockchain at the moment is serialized. So if we have 30 transactions, we're going to execute those one after the other as they come in the block. And although we already know that this is not going to be drastically improving our performance, we know what our bottleneck is database access, return rights, and this is not going to change that, but it's still going to improve syncing. If this is to be hard fork inducing and activated only in series or not is yet to be discussed. There are different approaches there. But the goal is if you have 30 transactions, depending on how many cores you have on your system, to execute those in parallel. This will allow us to have more fine measures regarding minimum hardware requirements and start discussing maybe bumping the gas limit of blocks, but that's further down the line. Now I give the stage to Uf to talk about a bit Snapshot Sync.
Yes, so a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we merged the improved garbage collection into master. It hasn't been released yet, but it will be part of the next release. And what this does is that it supports garbage collection on all state trees. And now that we have that, an extra step we want to explore, that I'm exploring now, is to use the garbage collection sweeps to collect snapshots of all the state data at a certain height, and then extend the sync protocol so that a node that wants to sync the chain can, well, first fetch all the block headers and then request all the live state at a certain height, perhaps a few thousand blocks beneath the top, and then go from there. So essentially start with an already garbage collected chain, so to speak. So right now I'm working on building the snapshot index. And then since Ethereum has a similar function, we will probably steal quite a few details from them in terms of how you present the metadata and split the snapshot into chunks, for example, 4 megabyte chunks like they do. So hopefully this will be a really big improvement, and hopefully it will not take 2.5 years like it did for the Ethereum team. Of course, they didn't have anyone to copy at the time.
Okay, thank you. Now, Metin.
Hello. Next slide, please. While we were developing various tools for the foundation, we did, well, it's not exactly a discovery, but we figured out that there are basically there is a spectrum of the complexity which you can employ when talking to the blockchain. And at the bottom you see how you generate the transaction via curl, which is mostly impossible to do like for a regular developer. And at the top you see how we generate the transaction by using the SDK. And there is this huge gap between the two where you mostly cannot go, or it's hard to go. And so I have started exploring basically tools and maybe libraries which will allow us to maybe visualize this process and allow to go lower when needed, which is mostly when we are developing new features, which we like don't have support from wallets yet or support from the SDK yet, etc. So that's mostly what I'm going to work on.
Great. Now we go back to Uf.
Yes. So with state channels at the Eternity Universe 2, I presented a state channel market demo showing how you can forward payments between multiple users in a state channel network. Very lightweight, practically for free. Since then, Eternity Anstalt has also developed a state channels demo server. During that process, we discovered some bugs in robustness bugs in the sort of server side of state channels. So we have now rewritten some of that code to make it more scalable and more robust. When you, for example, write, say, a casino backend or whatever. Now, in the next quarter, we want to look into how to move this a little bit forward. And one thing is to improve the state channel market demo. Those who saw my demo that I ran know that it is one of the ugliest things ever. So improving the interface would be, and also making it more product specific. We're thinking, for example, a micro paywall, something similar. Another thing is to improve the support of state channels on mobiles. We have a couple of ideas. One of the more spectacular ones involve actually getting the Eternity code to run on a mobile phone. And Sean, who is conveniently not here, is experimenting with that. Another thing I will be looking into is actually breaking out the state channels application from the main node and adding a little bit to the API so that you can monitor the chain events via the REST API and be able to run a much more lightweight client that way. Basically, you don't really even have to have the chain locally to run the state channel application, as long as you get the events. So those are ideas that I will explore, or we will explore.
Great. I might disagree about not needing the blockchain to execute certain calls in a state channel, but
Oh yeah,
we'll take that offline.
You will need to post transactions onto the chain, so you need to connect. You need to connect to some node. That node doesn't have to run on your mobile phone, though.
Yeah. Okay. Something that we wanted to discuss a long time ago was the progress of Aegora. So, Craig, are you with us? I can only see only a subset of the participants.
He is here, but I can't hear him.
Okay, assuming that anyone can
now
hear
I can.
me, I'm here.
Now I can.
Hey, I had 2 mutes on. Okay, so yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay, the stage is yours.
Okay, so excuse me. So Aegora is a marketplace that if you go to agora.jp, you will see there's like people trying to sell stuff for Eternity coins. That's a marketplace that runs completely on-chain. There's no fake layer 2 stuff. There's no fake exchange centralized ledger where the deal is give me all of your coins and I promise that I will manage the transactions correctly in the background. There's none of that stuff. This completely runs on-chain. And the core problem we're trying to solve with this is the crypto world has a big problem. That's what can you do with your tokens? Well, the reality is with on-chain tokens, you pretty much can't do anything. That's like everyday life type things. You can the basic problem with on-chain tokens across the entire crypto world is that you could buy like a car or a house, a huge ticket item, where you're willing to wait up to 11 hours for the mempool to clear your transaction. But there's no way you could go buy a coffee or even conduct like eBay style business person to person on chain, because the transaction rates are just too low almost everywhere except for Eternity. The Bitcoin NG concept, where you separate the concern of solving the puzzle to become the leader, where the big mining task, right, where everybody's doing all these hashing problems to try to become the leader, that's separated from the problem of updating the ledger, because we have microblocks in Eternity. Well, that makes Eternity fast enough to make a practical online marketplace that you could interact with, and you can get feedback quickly enough that it doesn't bother you as a user, and it's not discouraging for a seller. So that's what Aegora. This was sort of experimental because nobody had done this before. When I came to this project originally, my whole thinking was, well, this is supposed to be money, so it needs to have commercial use. And looking around, there's like 0 marketplaces that really depend on crypto on chain. Now, there's a lot of marketplaces that do, well, not a lot. There's a couple of marketplaces that use what's called layer 2 solutions, which are essentially fake. They are, they get around the transaction speed problem by centralizing, which is the exact opposite of what the D in DeFi stands for. And they always have a way that they can be compromised from somebody from within. The other style of solution that you see is also fake, which is exchange ledgers. So an exchange will present a solution to a vendor and say, hey, we will make a fast payment system on our off-chain ledger as long as everybody has committed their tokens into our wallets that will represent their account. And then at the end, we can do a roll-up transaction to commit everything back if you want to go back on chain again with your own tokens. Now, the interesting thing about that is that those exchange solutions are basically, they're human managed state channels. And because they're human managed, they're prone to a lot of problems, and we wind up with things like FTX. That's exactly the chain of propositions that led to problems like FTX. So our idea was, how can we make crypto actually useful for real? Well, to do it and really have it be crypto, it has to be on chain. How do we take advantage of smart contracts for real, instead of just making up weird things that we hope people will buy because the hype will drive it, or the Logan Paul game that will make you money, that kind of nonsense. We wanted to get away from that, get back to the real world. So that's what Aegora is for, and we've got it to the point that it works now. You can go to agora.jp and you can post something for sale, and somebody else can click buy, and they can actually buy it from you. You can communicate to each other, where to ship it, the overhead, whatever. The details of that item, the images associated with it, the conversation between the buyer and the seller, all that stuff actually we dump it all. We're not retaining a bunch of data at the end of this. Privacy is not the point here, but it is a semi-advantage of Aegora over some other platforms. We do have to comply with Japanese law because this is set up under the Tsurei company here in Japan. So there is a review process when you submit something for sale. It will have to be reviewed by a human before we show it to the world, because people are crazy. So there's a couple of things that aren't just, the reality of dealing with humans forces a couple of things on us that are a little bit different from the perfect utopian ideal of the libertarian crypto ideal. But I think we've got a pretty good middle ground here, where you can use crypto actually on chain. A smart contract is what protects the buyer and the seller from each other, gives them a way to negotiate. Anyway, in the process of doing this, we also ran into a ton of different just usability and integration problems. The tooling to interact, like if I want to write a backend server, how do I communicate with the chain? The SDK wasn't even documented at all when we first came to it. The SDK's state has improved tremendously since then, but we wound up writing a much lighter weight library that's not even, we didn't even use the SDK to write this. And we also we started a project called Vanilla that the foundation was willing to fund, because they couldn't fund the actual development of Aegora itself, because it's a different company, because it's a commercial project. But the Vanilla library itself gave us a good way to identify, well, it gave us an easy way to talk to the chain from an Erlang node. And it also showed us a bunch of gaps that we had in integration tooling on the back end, which is going to let us improve Vanilla, extend Vanilla to other languages than Erlang. And it just gave us a good roadmap. So at this point in the project, because the thing basically works, so it's up and available to the public, you can't lose money on Aegora unless someone rips you off. Like, we don't have a technical problem in Aegora that will ever make you lose money. So it's safe to use now. So it's already up and it's public. But we have a long roadmap of improvement that we want to do. And the first step in that long roadmap of improvement is we are documenting the process of how we built it, what problems we encountered, how we solved them, how that resulted in the Vanilla library, and further things that we want to do going forward, one of which is like a point of sale system, because Eternity is fast enough that we could use it practically in retail. You could actually do the cashier checkout case, or you could pay for your meal at a restaurant or something on chain without using some weird layer 2, hocus pocus thing. So we're looking at point of sale. This has shown us the path forward. Having a real use case has completely changed our thinking about how the chain works, how we want to deal with the chain, the things we want to be able to do with the chain, how we want to be able to talk to wallets, and so on. So it's been a really interesting exercise in terms of just exploring blockchain and what can be done with it if you have a fast blockchain. Not having a fast blockchain is, well, that's the problem of most blockchains right now. But this one's fast enough to do this, and so we went with it, and it's really, really been awesome. I could give a demo here during this talk if we want to, or I'm totally open.
Time.
But
sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. No worries.
But do you have sales already?
Yeah. I mean, we've sold. There's been a sale on the RealNet. There's been a bunch of test sales on the testnet site. If you go to testnet.agora.jp, you can play around with fake money over there, and there's been stuff over there, of course, in testing. On the real chain, we've got one. We've had a single sale so far. We're about to have a second one because we actually need a graphics card, and there's another one up for sale that we're going to buy. But yeah. So I mean, some actual businesses have been done, but it's like token amounts right now because nobody really knows about this yet. We're just right now really focused on trying to document how we got where we are, because that story contains all the little details that you have to think about if you're going to try to do something similar to this. And we would like to make it easy for other people to kind of replicate what we've done here. And, but I mean, from my personal perspective, because Eternity has this, like, it's got kind of a killer feature set. The contract language is the best around, like, by a wide margin. And the chain is the fastest without resorting to unfair tricks that open really scary manipulations of the chain. Those two features right there mean that this should be a commerce coin. I don't think it's not a good target for things like NFTs or whatever. There's already tons of chains for stuff like that. The best use of this would be as a commerce coin, in my view. And so we're really just going for the commercial adoption case. So
yeah,
let's see.
I'm afraid that we won't have time for questions. So let's go to the next. Sorry.
Sure.
So Denis is not here to talk about this, but essentially the wallet, Superhero wallet, allows anyone to sign a message. Sorry. And that message is essentially a hash. And Sophia doesn't read, well, it certainly can write hashes and stuff like that, but since messages are encoded in the wallet in UTF-8, if a hash is being produced by Sophia to be signed by the wallet, it can get hard to validate at the hand of the user. So there is Ethereum proposal that's AIP 1.2, and it essentially introduces structures inside the hashes. So basically, if a hash is being produced in the smart contract, it can be parsed and understood by the wallet itself and so on. This is not still verified and solidified how we're going to implement this, but this is something that we'll be working on this quarter. Now, I think it's Rogerio or Sebastian.
Yep, I'm going to be sharing you my screen.
Okay.
All right. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So it's I'm going to start with middleware, and I'm going to explain a bit what middleware is for those that are not familiar with it. And then I'm going to do like a brief summary of what was done on the previous quarter, and then we can just introduce what we're going to do on this quarter. So the purpose of the middleware is to provide a layer of aggregated chain data. So it provides additional endpoints other than those from the node. And those additional endpoints provide easy access and further information that's already being indexed by the middleware so that users can get like useful information from the node fast and whatever information they want. And this is done via, I mean, the endpoints are queryable, they are paginated, and they're versioned, which means that they're queryable because you can filter the data, you can get whatever, you can scope the data as well. So for instance, the transactions endpoint, you can filter by transaction type or by the time on when that transaction happened. Then it's paginated because it always returns a list of paginated results. It never returns all of the results at once. You always need to go through the different pages if you want to get all results. And then it's versioned because every endpoint is prefixed by the version, so that when we introduce breaking changes, we simply introduce them to the new version, and the previous version just remains the same. And then you can also use the middleware to get live data through the WebSockets, which updates instantly on whatever happens on the node, which is also a nice way to get instant data and instant changes from the chain itself. So now I'm going to do like a brief summary of what were the Q1 additions. I'm going to walk through them real fast. So we added new channels endpoints. Before there wasn't any channels endpoints. There's an endpoint to list all the inactive and active channels. And there's also an endpoint to get a specific channel's details. And this is an example of it. This is a curl, a request using the curl tool. And the useful thing about it is that it not only returns the amount that the amount that the channel has, the amount of tokens that the channel has, but also the round, the state hash, and the amount of updates that that channel has had. And by updates, meaning all the different transactions that could happen to that channel, so withdrawals, deposits, and so on. Then another feature that we added is the activities endpoint that already existed before. We now added new filters where you can filter by activity type and by ownership. And when filtering by ownership, what it means is that you get all the activities that were not only the account being filtered by is present on that activity, but also the account being filtered by triggered that activity itself. So for instance, you would get all of the money all of the transactions, all of the activities for the transactions that came out of your account, or all of the AX9 transfers that came out of your account, but you will not get any indirect activities that your account didn't explicitly perform. this is an example where there's a AX9 activity, AX9 transfer activity, where the sender of that AX9 token is also the one that performed the transaction. And this is an example of the activity endpoint being filtered by type. In this case, the type is AX9 transfers, and that's how you would get like a list of the AX9 transfer events. Then another feature that we added is that we're now using mixed releases, which makes the middleware Docker image a lot lighter, and also it improves the startup speed. There's more explanation about the benefits of using mixed releases on the mix page itself, and you can check that out. But it's now in a better state. And yeah, now I'm gonna let Rogerio take it from here.
Hello everyone, this is Rogerio, and we in the Middleware team, we are always trying to aggregate new data to make the decisions of the users and the traders easier. Traders of the DeFi and also NFT traders. And this is one of them. There is a kind of NFT where you can have multiple copies, and some people might say they are semi-fungible tokens, but we call them templates. It's easy to know that it conveys the idea where you have an NFT and you can create multiple copies of it. So for each template, you can have an optional edition limit, right? And when it comes to trading, we all know that it comes down to supply and demand. So it's interesting. We provide this information where you can compare the edition limit to the actual supply. And you can check that requesting these two endpoints, all the templates of this contract, or the tokens of a certain template. We also wanted to improve the middleware availability and to be the first to know if there is any error happening. So we added some monitoring to improve the mean time to repair and to receive notifications, especially to receive notifications on internal server errors, but also to be aware of any performance issues. So there were some metrics that were added for Phoenix requests by route. If there is any route that's not performing well, we will know about it. But also in regards to the machine, to the resources consumption, and also to the general status of the middleware. There were some improvements on AX9, some requests from the Explorer team that's always helping us to provide more meaningful information. And this first one was one of them. The balance now is given for the latest microblock. So you don't need to wait for the block to be fully mined, and it almost immediate result shown after the transaction happened. There were also two aggregated token info that might help the DeFi users. For example, you're trying to buy some AX9 token and you want to know how popular it is. So you can check how the amount of holders of this token. And also, it's important to know also the supply, right? So you can check the initial supply right after the creation of the token, and also track how the supply is changing in regards to mintings and burns. And lastly, there were some stats that they were added mostly for the new Explorer. But if you want to, if you might need them, they are related also to AX9. One specific for contracts, where you can see. You can also have some idea of the activity of an AX9 token, right? Knowing how much events have been emitted from this contract, and also how many AX9 contracts there are on the chain. We also improved the inner transactions filtering. This was possible before, but you would get mixed results of on-chain transactions with the GA meter and paying for that has the inner transactions, right? And now you can be explicit. You can specify, I want to filter by a sender and only get the results from GA meter transactions. These also solved some ambiguity in regards to the token IDs, because there was some conflict between on-chain and inner transactions. But specifying the type, you can get very precise information on by a certain field. So coming next, what we're gonna implement, this will be exciting. There will be lots of work, interesting work to do in regards to hyperchains, to track the coin supplies, and the dev and mine rewards were disabled already because it works differently on hyperchains, and we're gonna expose some information in regards to the election, to the commitments, and POS information as well. This will be a big feature that we're gonna implement, because currently a single machine is responsible for both syncing and providing and serving the endpoints, all the endpoints, HTTP and WebSockets. And we know this is resource consuming, right? Syncing, you need to calculate a lot of hashes, and we have a node that runs alongside with the middleware. So the idea is to provide some scalability, better scalability for the middleware, separating these concerns, the syncing and the endpoints. And this might also help users to develop their own tools to do for specific needs, for specific applications, using the feed from the syncing provided by the middleware. We're gonna deprecate on this second quarter the V1, the legacy API, the first one that was implemented 2 years ago, around 2 years ago, to focus on how can I say, some formats. We're gonna make some formats more standardized. There were some discoveries in regards to binary formats during the V2, and we're gonna remove certain features that have an overlapping with the node. We're gonna provide better filtering for AXN, any contracts that are from the standards. And also the TXI it's an information that's more related to the inner workings of the middleware. So we don't think that we should expose this information, and all transaction information should be fetched from the hash. So all the improvements, there will be a full history names endpoint to get all the changes to be able to track all the changes that might happen with a certain name, to capture new events returned by the node. That it's been implemented in the latest versions of the node. Contract details endpoint to centralize all kinds of contracts. The Eternity blockchain is very rich in regards to the kinds of transactions that are available. So generalized accounts, you have standard contracts, you have regular contracts. So all these contracts information, they can be fetched on a centralized, on a specific endpoint. There will be also wealth tracking to be able to know which are the wallets that accumulate more AE tokens, and moreover some activities filtering, including the microblock filter.
And that's it, right?
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of changes there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's see who's next. Oh, okay. Since Denis is not able to join us, and he hadn't joined us so far, we will leave that for the next time. Now I pass the stage to Radit.
Hi, hope I'm hearable. So regarding Sophia and friends, our main effort so far has been focused on a debugger, about which Raith is going to elaborate in a while. As the debugger is going to be integrated into REPL, this tool was overhauled as well, especially for stability and functionality. We are still polishing and testing recent changes, but we plan to release a new version soon. Regarding Sophia as a language, there have been several nice features shipped so far, such as compile time constants and whole expressions, for example. And for this quarter, we are going to improve, or actually introduce a module system that would allow project management, which is more in line with modern standards. I can't wait for it, to be honest. That would also bring us nested namespaces and overall more flexible scope management, hopefully. So how is it going with the debugger, Ive? Can we get the slide?
I'm clicking. Oh, okay.
Oh.
So the debug, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, so the debugger has been the main project I've been working on for the past several months. Now it has almost all the features that are available in a normal debugger, like breakpoints, and variable inspections, and so on. The work on it is almost done. At least the first stage, you can see that all discussions are resolved in the open pull requests on GitHub. And in this quarter, we will be trying to test it, make sure that it works properly before we merge it and make a release. After that, we will be thinking of other new ways to make the debugger more usable for Sophia developers. Yeah, that's it.
Great. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, if we make it in time, we will also consider adding some support for AE Studio and work a little bit on editor support, like Emacs, for example, or VS Code.
Yeah. I'm afraid the Vim people were not that many. Okay, and I think that was our last slide. And now I stop sharing my screen. Oof, okay, that's easy. Now let's see what questions we have. The first question is for Denise. I'm really sorry that Denise is not with us today, so there is no one to ask to answer this question. And the second question is for Craig. I'll read it out loud so Craig can answer it himself if he manages to unmute this time. So what's the difference between Aegora and Vanilla? Craig?
Okay, I think I have successfully unmuted.
Yes.
Maybe. Okay. So the Aegora is a marketplace website. It's aegora.jp. That's a commercial project that has been funded by the Tsurugi Corporation in Japan. That's their thing. Vanilla is a library that makes it simpler to talk to the chain on the back end, and a separate part of that project is a library that makes it simple to talk to wallets from the front end. So Aegora uses vanilla, but vanilla is a foundation-funded library project that we didn't realize how to do until... Sorry, yes, it's open source. Anybody can use it. Part of telling the story of Aegora actually is we're trying to document vanilla in a way that somebody new to blockchain can show up and go, how do you do a thing with it? And find kind of read the narrative, read the story of what happened. And then by the end of that story, they have in their head the pieces that are necessary to use, and vanilla will make sense to them even if they're new to blockchain. So that's a big goal that we have there, is to tell that story, and in the process of telling that story, have people understand what's even going on with blockchain. So that's vanilla, and that's really turned out to be cool. I didn't write that all by myself. That was Peter Harpending wrote all the front end stuff, the TypeScript, JavaScript stuff there, and it worked out really well. Very happy with that.
Yeah, and the prime client is Aegora, so it obviously works.
It's in production.
Yeah. Next question is for Rogerio. What types of Hyperchains data can be queried by the middleware?
So currently, all the work in regards to Hyperchains that have been done were to disable some features that are not applicable to the Hyperchains. So for the next quarter, we're gonna work on bringing new data in regards on that depends on how Hyperchains work.
Yeah. For example, the reward distribution happens inside the smart contract, and this is definitely not how it happens currently on mainnet. So, for example, this can be shown in the middleware, like who gets how much reward and stuff like that.
Sure.
And if we manage to standardize the contract themselves, maybe even the middleware can inspect staker pools and stuff like that. So I think this is still to be discussed. Next question is for Radek. How can the debugger be used currently without AE Studio?
So currently, the debugger is a CLI exclusive tool. So you'd have to download it from GitHub, build it, and then you just have executable. You'd also need Erlang runtime system for that, and you would use it just like, for example, GDB if you're familiar with.
Yeah.
I just want to add that it's not currently merged in master, and you have to check out specific branches to use it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like it's going to be released, and instructions will be provided upon the release.
Yeah, great. I don't know. I'm usually having bad time compiling Sophia contract, so I think that could be helpful. Further more debugging. Or maybe I should learn not to write crappy code. Next question is for U. What type of state channel mobile applications do you imagine as a first use case?
Well, so yeah, I was thinking, like I said, about playing around with a micro paywall and being one who Dimitar. Oh, sorry. I was looking at the YouTube screen and it looked like Dimitar was talking, but there is a bit of delay there. The idea about a micro paywall would be that you could basically have mini paywalls where that would be so lightweight that you could essentially pay for the next page of text. So that would be one thing. and other things might be basically small market networks. Another thing that idea that I've been toying with is mediated transactions, where you basically use state channels via and do a trade via a trusted intermediary, and where that trusted intermediary can be any party that the other two parties trust, and essentially use a hash lock, kind of like two-phase commit, where the intermediary holds the payment until confirmation has been received that, for example, goods have been shipped or something like that. Or say payments for tokens could be another thing. It wouldn't make it sort of waterproof, but it would increase safety in such transactions significantly compared to if you're doing untrusted peer-to-peer. And so those are some ideas.
Yeah, that sounds challenging. I don't know who's going to write the front end for those. Or maybe
well, Metin will do that.
Okay, it's settled. The next question is for me. How does Hyperchain staking work, and is it similar to other proof of stake chain staking? So the really cool thing about Hyperchains is that it allows you to build another blockchain on completely your flavor. So depending what you want, you can adjust it. We only provide example set of contracts that you can change according to what you want. So if you want to follow our advice, you can use those contracts. And if you have something different in mind, you can do anything. What is really important is that you provide a smart contract that elects a leader, and the smart contract may be the same or different that redistributes rewards. And that's everything that is required by the Hyperchains implementation. Everything further beyond that, it's up to you. So you can have any type of staking you want. The one that we currently provide is again in a smart contract. So you don't need to write Erlang code to change that. You only need to write Sophia and maybe use the debugger in case you get lost. So the current implementation allows staking pools, and not everyone is allowed to become a staker. There is a variable in the smart contract itself that defines a minimum amount for a user to become a staker. So when you're setting up your Hyperchain, you have to define the minimum amount needed for anyone to become a staker, and if they have that amount, they become a staker. And since not everyone can become a staker, and this minimum amount is enforced that a staker cannot go below that amount. But even if you don't have, let's say, 1 million AE or whatever is the minimum in your specific Hyperchain, then you can support a staker, basically delegating your stake even if it is 1 AE. And this happens by joining a staker pool. So every staker has a pool of delegates, we call them delegates, that support their own right to get elected as a leader. And adding more and more delegates, convincing people to support you, gives you more chance of becoming a leader. And if you don't like this approach, you simply have to write your own smart contract, and you can have a radically different Hyperchain. The next question is for Craig. Are prices in Aegora measured in AE? What if the price of AE fluctuates?
That is a Very, very good question. Yes, items on Aegora are valued in AE and only in AE. There's no fiat actually mentioned anywhere on the site at all. The way that that's managed is after if you're a seller, you can change the price of your item arbitrarily. So you can do a price update. Now, before your item is shown to the public, it has to be on chain. Updating that price requires a contract call. So the seller can adjust the price arbitrarily after posting the sale. The second way that that's managed is after a buyer clicks buy on an item, and let's say the price of AE is fluctuating because crypto is always, well, not always, but right now it's fairly volatile. The buyer may decide, I don't want to, like there's a graphics card for sale out there right now for 1,500 AE. Now AE floats around 0. It floats around a price of about 10 yen. So like it's something like 100 yen to $1. It's something like 10 yen to 1 AE. So it's like the yen value is 100th, the AE value is 1/10, the dollar is 1, and so on. And there's a graduation kind of like this right now. But if that changed overnight, some whale buys a whole bunch of AE and the price spikes. Anybody who's buying something would want to hit block on the sale. So you say that you want to purchase something, you put the AE in the contract, so that's reserved for you now. As a buyer, you can hit block on the sale and force a conversation with the seller. Any sales page, there's a demo video about this that I posted a link to on the YouTube channel for this. When you click buy on an item, the item page itself becomes like a chat page between you and the seller, the buyer and the seller. So if the buyer blocks the sale, which means that the seller can't get the tokens out of the contract temporarily, you talk about why. Hey, AE just spiked. It's worth way too much now. I don't want to buy this for that much. Please adjust the price. So you can talk to the guy and ask for a price adjustment. He can adjust the price, and any adjustments to the contract after the buyer has already put tokens into the contract will be shown in that chat log. So if you do a price adjustment, it'll show up there. So you can see that and make an agreement. The same thing is true for I live in Japan. Dimitar lives in Bulgaria. If he wants to send me something, the shipping's probably not going to be free. So he's willing to sell this item for a certain amount, but he's probably going to have some shipping overhead that's going to be special, like more than he was expecting because it's out of his region. So we would discuss that and he'd probably adjust the price upward to reflect that. We would agree on it. I would add the funds to the contract to make it clear, and then he would be able to accept the sale, accept me buying the item. Either party at any time during this negotiation phase can cancel, and it immediately, refunds everybody involved. So, and if that happens, if you do cancel a sale, somebody wants to buy an item, then they decide they don't, so they cancel it. Or the seller says, I don't want to buy from that guy. He's tying my item up and he's not answering my questions or whatever. Either party can cancel that, and that item goes back into being an open sale that's publicly visible again. The communication, that chat log between the buyer and the seller is private to them, and that conversation log winds up going away at the end of it. What remains is an archive of that sale so that it can be seen from the seller's history page, so you can learn how to trust, see who you can trust over time, who's sold and who's gotten good reviews and bad reviews. But anyway, the price issue itself is left up to the humans because there's no good automated way to manage that really. So we just decided, let's give this to the humans.
Okay. And I think we're running out of time. We have a hard limit of 1 hour, and Eric can correct me here, but I think we're running out of time. I think we have a minute left.
Yep.
So yeah, I think if there's no more questions, I think we can close today's session for now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you.
everyone for joining. It was really interesting. And yeah, looking forward to your next contributions into the next AMA session.
Yeah. See you.
Thank
See you
you.
all.
Yay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
I didn't hear first that the recording is off.
It's still saying live.
Eric?
I stopped it, but I don't know, it's like very laggy today. There's some issues with server, I think, YouTube side.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.